Welcome back to another episode of Thanks for Rolling. I'm one of your hosts, Jeff. I'm here with my co-host, Pat. How you doing?
Doing well.
It's been a while since we've been in the studio.
It has. Someone was on vacation.
Yeah, I took 2 weeks of leisure time to, get my mind and body right.
Must be nice.
Yeah, it was pretty good, even though I worked through part of it, so I can't really call it a full vacation. And we're here with a very special guest joining us today, continuing our series of getting into people's lives and their jiu-jitsu journey, although this man who joined us has a journey way outside of jiu-jitsu as well. So you want to introduce yourself? We typically do a terrible job of actually introducing our guests, so why don't you introduce yourself?
Randy Haskins, born and raised Springfield, Mass. That's the intro. Cassandra's son.
So I would say Randy was high on my list of guests to get on the podcast, but I wanted to make sure we get a few under our belt and work out a lot of the kinks so that way we get a quality episode put out for the people. So I think we're at that point. So we usually kick this thing off by asking our guests, how did we end up in this same place together? What led you to training at 10th Planet Springfield with us?
I have a background in judo, and one of the first techniques that I learned that Norikudo sensei taught me is called Ashi Kanuki, which is leg bolt lock. Eddie calls it the lockdown. So I'm the only judo person that I've ever seen actually use that technique. But then when the internet got big, because back when I started, there was like no internet, and,
Don't date yourself.
Yeah. When the internet got big, I started just cruising through, and I ended up running into videos of Eddie Bravo using the lockdown, and I was intrigued. So I searched for a school. I think it's somewhere in Connecticut. It was pretty far out. I jumped on my motorcycle, rode like 2.5 hours, whatever, ended up at this school that had just shut down. It was a 10th Planet school, and the number was still on the wall. So I called the number, and the guy actually answered, and we talked. He had joined another school that wasn't 10th Planet. He shut his down and joined another school. So we talked for a while and just talked about, the leg bolt lock and all these other things. And I came back depressed. And then I also run a school. So one of my students called me and told me that there was a 10th Planet opening up in Springfield. It sent me pictures of you building.
Yep.
And you building the dojo, painting and doing the lights or whatever you were doing. And I was like, oh, man. So I ended up getting your number and calling you. The rest is history.
Yeah. Fun fact for the podcast, Randy is student numero uno.
No kidding.
Yep.
I don't think I ever knew that.
Yeah, he was signed up, I don't know, what was it, a couple of weeks in advance, a month in advance, something like that. Yeah. We had ran, I forget how long in advance it was, but we ran like a pre-registration special. We were trying to, get some people in the door before we were actually in the door. And I think Randy was number 1, and Haniel might have been number 2, Ryan number 3. You guys were right up there, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Listen, I don't care what it was going to cost. I was going to join. After seeing his paths, and I was impressed, highly impressed.
I want to talk a little bit about your martial arts journey in general, but I'm curious, coming to jiu-jitsu through that judo lens, had you been following, aware of, interested in the UFC at all? Because that's, frankly, a lot of people make their way, or a lot of people we've even talked to, right, have made their way to jiu-jitsu through liking MMA, right? Was that on your radar at all?
No, I'm not a tournament guy. My careers have been like prisons and DYS and things like that, and I did bodyguard work. I did some bounty hunting. I did all types of stuff like that. So sport application doesn't really sit well with me, and I respect it, but I need something different. So it was always that. I watched the UFC, but I wasn't really impressed. With the whole dynamic.
Yep.
If you listen to Superfoot Bill Wallace, he talks about how the UFC was a setup. It was an infomercial, a large infomercial for the Gracies, you know, that type thing.
Yep.
That's all it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're probably the first person, although it doesn't surprise me, the first person that we've talked to that has made their way without any influence from like watching UFC, getting caught up in any of that, et cetera, right? I think
I think it's just an age and a timing of training scenario as well, because I think everyone so far has been 30 and under.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're just getting into training at that age and that time. So, yeah, they're going to be heavily influenced by what's going on in MMA and competitive jiu-jitsu at the time, whereas Randy's been training since he was a youngster way before those days.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of refreshing, actually. Yeah. So take us back. Take us way back. Like, how did you get involved in judo?
Well, my first art was karate. When I was younger, I was like, I don't know, 6 or something. A family friend, we're so close that we call each other cousins.
Sure.
We were at Mass Mutual picnic, doing some stuff out there, and he asked my best friend to borrow like 50 cents or something like that, and my best friend said no, and I laughed. I was standing on top of a dirt mound, and I laughed, and my cousin was standing on side of the dirt hill, and he threw a kick up at me and knocked me off the hill down the other side. Highly impressed, and I started asking him about it, and his mother found out that I was interested, so she took me and my brothers and put us in the school, paid for his school, and that was the start of my journey, and I never stopped.
No kidding.
Everybody else stopped.
Yeah.
I never stopped.
Yeah. So that didn't transition to other arts?
Oh, yeah. So, I started karate, studied that for a while. Well, she put me in the Kempo school, Kempo Karate under Kali Griffin, who passed away. And then I got out of there because my personality, it's very important that you find an art that fits you, fits your personality. You know, it didn't really fit me. And I ended up going to a gentleman after that by the name of Hakeem Duke. He was a pretty interesting dude. This guy was like, he was a little Muslim man who could walk on top of a fence, like just walk down the fence like you walk on the ground. And him and his wife would do stuff like that. You go to Blunt Park and see him walking across the swing poles with bowling balls on his hand. It was just the weirdest stuff. He used to do some weird things, and a lot of he made me learn gymnastics in order to build my confidence, floor exercises. So I trained with him for a while. Then I trained with this gentleman by the name of Leonard B. Lawless. He was a Green Beret in the military. He was one of my mother's boyfriends. Trained with him for a while. And then he started building a dojo, personal dojo for me in my mother's house, so I could train every day. And then when they broke up, I ended up training with the Whitleys. I went to high school with the Whitleys, and they brought me to their older brother who was running their family system called Taekwondo Karate when their father passed away. And they brought me to work out with them one day, and I never left that school. And then after that, I started training in Karate-Jutsu under Takeshi Okamura sensei, who had just moved from Japan here. And then he paid Norikudo sensei $1,000 to train me for a year before I went to Japan to fight in a tournament. And then I started training with Norikudo and just never left him. And that's when I studied judo under Norikudo.
This is probably a naive statement, right? I had no idea there was that many schools, teachers, professors like in this area. Right? This was all here, right?
Yeah. The thing is, Takeshi Okamura sensei trained privately. We built a dojo in his house. his father or his family owned a corporation in Japan. So when he came here, he came and they gave him a lot of money and they told him to build a business. So he gave me money and told me, I want you to build me a dojo. So we took his 2-car garage and built it up into a beautiful dojo. I hired a carpenter, and they came in and we gutted it. Built it up. So I was always trained privately. Whitley Sensei always taught privately, things like that. You know, kept the tradition alive. And that's how I do it now to this day.
Something I wanted to dive into a little bit is I know you're very particular on your differentiation on how you use the terms, the martial arts and the martial sciences. Can you give us a little understanding on kind of where you draw that line and kind of your explanation on both of those?
The martial arts is, in my estimation, the way I break it down is one part of the martial sciences. So the martial sciences are the understanding of criminal law, physics, psychology, sociology, anatomy, and martial arts technique as it applies to combat.
Gotcha.
Martial arts is the physical aspect. It's the tools. The understanding is the rest of the martial sciences. You know, there's a lot of people walking around with great tools, but with no understanding. It's equivalent to you driving down the street and your car breaking down and you got a toolbox on board. You pull over, you open the hood, and you're looking, and you don't know what you're looking at. What good are the tools, you know? And then, so the question, it begs the question, what's more important, tools or information? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because let's say the same scenario, you're driving down the road, your car breaks down, you have no tools on board, but you open the hood and you look and you go, that hose.
You can figure something out.
You know, supposed to be connected. I got a hanger in the trunk, and you get the hanger, you bend it 17 times, and it holds the hose in place, and you get to where you got to go. What would tools have done? You know, they would have made the job that much easier. So the martial sciences is, like I said, criminal law, physics, psychology, sociology, anatomy, and martial arts technique as it applies to combat. And the martial arts is just one part of that. It's the collection of tools.
Okay. Is this something that most people just haven't heard or don't know, or is this something you kind of developed through your own thinking?
Yeah, it's something I developed through my own thinking. I try to put, much like Eddie and, you know, and you, I try to put everything easier to learn in a nice package to make it easier to retain and learn for people.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I don't want to rewind us too much, right? But so you have your own school, right?
Yes.
You have your own dojo, which is called
the Underground Alliance Martial Science Research Association,
which is one of my favorite things to see. When I see that written, I just love that.
Also known as the Uamsara.
Oh yeah, you saw that, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll give a shout out there. And so when you find, how do students come to you, right? So you were introduced to people, you know, do people?
It's all word of mouth.
Yeah.
Word of mouth. People, a lot of Hanyo came because he saw me in the prison doing things, you know, Ryan as well, you know, just word of mouth.
Yep. And then are they, how is it that they come to an understanding of the martial sciences, right? Because that's, while I can like totally identify with what you're saying, and I think it's I would think that most people outside who maybe don't know you or have not been exposed to that are thinking like, what is that, right? Like, Pat and I have talked about this, and I'll ask you the same question in a minute, but, you know, when people have a preconceived notion of what martial arts is, right? Do you find that people are receptive to those ideas of the martial sciences and the martial arts being a part of that? Or do you have to kind of work that in as you're educating?
I find as I travel and teach seminars and stuff, every year I go to like Jersey and teach a seminar and in different little places, and more people I notice are using martial sciences, that term. Also, I've received emails from people about, you know, talking to me about the martial arts or whatever, and they'll have quotes of mine on the bottom of their email,
No kidding.
Yeah, I've received things like that.
That's great.
I'm like, where'd you get that quote? Oh, yeah,
No
that
kidding.
stuff. So people are starting to use. I was in I just got finished teaching a seminar one day, and I was in a bar, and this other instructor was in the corner with a bunch of people talking to them about some of my concepts,
Yeah.
But he was expressing the concepts as if they were his,
Yeah,
and me
no
and
kidding.
Haniel, and we're just sitting there looking at each other, just, like, wow, so it's been taken.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But when it comes to the martial community, I'm kind of, I piss a lot of people off with the stuff I say and write, so,
Because it's non-traditional? Like what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's another thing. People have this misconception of what traditional martial arts are. Because if we look at true tradition, the way most people apply that term to their art, it's stagnation. It's supposed to be the way it was 5,000 years ago, or, that's not true, because if that was the case, then we'd still be doing Tode, or something like that, which means China hand instead of Shorty, or Naha or Tomarite or, or Shotokan or Weche-Ru. Every time somebody gets taught something, what they do is they create their own curriculum and rename it, and and it has their little personality and
That constant evolution.
constant. That's true tradition, not stagnation. But you tell people that, and that's not true. You're supposed to do it the way Gichin Funakoshi did it 20. No.
I have so many questions now because we're right down the path. Like I had some questions I wanted to ask you, and now we're like, now my floodgates are open. So that immediately makes me think of probably the most famous martial artist of all time, right? Bruce Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of, and this is just my understanding, right? I could be right, wrong, who knows, right? But that idea of like, you're not supposed to do it that way, right? Like, or what you're teaching is not traditional enough, right? And so I'm just curious, like when you, as a lifelong martial artist, right? Someone who is such a major part of your life. What is your position when you see things like Bruce Lee on T-shirts everywhere, right? Or,
One thing is I'm not a big Bruce Lee fan. Let me clear that up
before everybody goes berserk.
People are gonna go
Are you
crazy.
like Quentin
on this one.
Tarantino, not a Bruce Lee fan?
Yeah.
No, he has issues.
Yeah.
Tarantino has issues. No, I'm really not in the respect. I respect what he's done for the martial sciences itself. I respect that. But as far as there's a lot of concepts and things. When it comes to the martial sciences, there's no such thing as right or wrong, just more practical or less practical for the goal, and things that they do really, it's really not practical for the goal, when it comes to pragmatic martial arts, there's one basic rule that has to be adhered to in order. Coming from a law enforcement background and training my entire life, I understand that Mike Tyson said it best when he said, everybody got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So the first action or combination of action you execute should have the ability and or probability of neutralizing your opponent's ability to continue to fight or immobilize the opponent entirely. If it doesn't do that, it's not pragmatic in nature. And they are more in they do a lot of sport things that you're trying to pass off as pragmatic martial arts. And that's the thing that bothers me, and people can't tell the difference. They're selling that to people and they're trying to do all this stuff, stop hits and all this crazy stuff that how does a boxer stop another boxer from hitting them?
He moves.
No, he clinches.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
anybody can clinch. You don't have to train to clinch with somebody, right? But you never see things like that. What do? They just doing all these combinations and all this blocks. In karate, in Jeet Kune Do, in whatever art that teaches blocks, right? Now, think about a fight you've ever been in and or seen. Have you ever seen somebody block anything in a fight?
No.
With their face.
Yeah.
All you see is two people punching at each other until one breaks through and, right? So why do people teach blocks? Because it's a fallacy. It's a fallacy. It's stuff like that that bothers me. And I call people out on that no matter where I go. And so I piss a lot of people off because they can't articulate it.
It's interesting.
You know, there's no such thing as blocking in a fight. There's no such thing. And if you block something in a fight, you're behind the curve. You know what I'm saying? You will get destroyed. You know what I mean? So it's just all those misconceptions that people are perpetuating and have been perpetuating for, you know, since the beginning of time that I'm trying to just eliminate, you know?
I think people have a hard time with, you know, where's that line between, you know, what are you doing for sport and what are you doing in, like you always talk about, a pragmatic sense, and not doing one and trying to play it off as the other. Yeah. There's nothing wrong if you want to be
nothing wrong.
A sport jiu-jitsu player. We do a ton of it. We compete in all the tournaments. We do all that stuff. It's just understand you're on that side of the line and that's what you're doing.
And that's the key. That's the key. But like I said, I was dealing with this person, and you know, I belong to this group called the Open Sparring Group, where we just get together and fight every 2 months for 2 hours. It's always on a Sunday, and we just fight. And so you never know who's going to be there. You get a text message telling you the location, the time, and you show up and, hey, would you like to fight? Yeah, let's fight. And
love to fight.
I think they made a movie about that called something Fight Club.
So that's what we got. We got a fight club pretty much. There's a bunch of schools they come from all over. So I was fighting this person, and they were like doing some things, and you know, when we're done, they were asking me, wow, how did you do this? How did you, you know, just asking me questions, and their instructor was over there talking to me. And then they said to me that they don't really train for, you know, pragmatic purposes. They don't train for that, you know. I train to keep in shape and this and that. I said, oh, okay, let me ask you this. Do you teach self-defense seminars and workshops at your dojo? Oh, yeah. For the public? Yeah. Okay. So do you inform them that you don't train for pragmatic purposes before you teach that? Do you throw out that disclaimer? Oh, no, I see what you just did there. Oh, no. You know, so you're misleading people. That's a problem. And I worked in the prison for 22 years. I see what people do to each other, you know. And when you're misled and you think it's going to work, you know, second place in the fight to the death is detrimental to your health.
So you could have given him a beat for that right there.
Right.
Yeah. Give him a Star Wars. Give him a lightsaber sound.
I always hit the wrong button, so I'll give him crickets, and it'll be embarrassing.
That would not be the right answer in that case. Yeah.
Yeah, I think amongst many things, I think one of the main points where my teaching and your teaching really meshes is in that concept-based approach that you were talking about a few minutes ago. Not, you know, you don't have to do this exact 1, 2, 3, 4 steps the way I do it, but here's the goal. You're trying to get from here, you're trying to get over there and avoid this on the way. I enjoy teaching that way, and I enjoy watching you teach that way as well. This week I've been teaching bits and pieces of the body lock passing, which is kind of the big craze in competitive jiu-jitsu right now, and I'm working it out myself at the same time. I've been using it a lot the last couple of months, and now trying to teach what I figured out. And I've been telling everybody, you know, we're starting at point A. We're trying to get past their leg and past their guard. Here's a couple of ways I do it. You can do it however you want to. Figure out what's the most effective way for you to get from here, past their leg, to over there. And you don't see that a lot of places.
No, you don't.
And sometimes it feels like, I could see as a beginner, it feels like maybe the instructor is holding back on you or not giving you all of the secrets. But I think if you have long-term trust in your instructor, you're going to see that that's the best way to learn.
Yeah. you know, a major part of as long as people understand that in the class, an instructor really doesn't teach you anything. They introduce you to some concepts. And when you put in the legwork at home is when you actually learn that thing, or on the mat. You know, you spend a little time on the mat, but you're at home more than you're actually in your dojo. Yep. You know, so you're actually going to process it and think about it. And, hey, honey, come here. Let me try this. Let me see this. Let me, you know, and that's how you actually really learn it. You know what I'm saying?
It's interesting as a student, right? The steps, like do this, put your hand here, do this, try have an upside down grip, have a, you know, I always call this a hamburger grip, like whatever. Like that stuff is useful, but it's only useful if you understand the big picture, right? So I think what you're talking about is like the big picture is that you're going to lock that body and you've got to figure out a way to get around those legs, right? And if I can't connect those like step-by-step pieces to what the bigger objective is, it's not going to work for me. That's right.
The good breakdown for me is like I said, I put everything in a nice package to make it easier to teach. So what I normally do is I introduce a concept, then I introduce the theory that supports that concept, and then I demonstrate with a physical example, which is whatever I'm going to use or I have used to achieve that concept. So like the concept of balance, the principle of balance, right? The way I break it down is I'll take somebody, that's the first thing I usually teach somebody, no matter what I'm teaching, whether it's karate, judo, Karate-Jutsu, jujitsu, it doesn't matter. So I'll put somebody in the middle of a room and I'll go, all right, so I'll pull them forward, right? Show them the 8 directions of off balance on somebody. So it's a visual, because there's 3 types of learners. You got the auditory, you got the visual, and you got the tactile, right? So I make sure I put somebody there to, you know, for the visual, and I'm speaking all about it. I show them the 8 directions for the visual, and I'm speaking it out, right? All right, so 8 directions of off balance, and then I break those 8 directions down by 3 dynamics. The 3 dynamics are the front dynamic, the rear dynamic, and the side dynamic. So the front dynamic, if your knee is in front of your toe and your head's in front of your knee, you're off balance in one of those 3 corners.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yep.
Right? The rear dynamic, if your butt is behind your heel and your head's behind your butt, you're off balance in one of those 3. The side dynamic is if your hip is on the outside of your foot and your head is on the outside of your hip, you're off balance in one of those 2. So that's the front dynamic, rear dynamic, and side dynamic. Then I tell them there's only one of 3 ways somebody could be standing in front of you. That's left foot forward, right foot forward, or parallel stance, right? And then I'll put somebody in their little fighting stance, and right? And I'll go, all right, so look at this person. Where's he off balance at? So when somebody's in a fighting stance, they usually have 1 foot forward, right, the other foot back. And if you look at their rear leg, their knee is in front of their toe, and their head's in front of their knee. So they're floating in between the off balance and balance in their right front, left rear type, you know? So now all I got to do is we use grips, pulls, pushes, right, in clinches to create an off-balance position or maintain an off-balance position. Then we load, trip, reap, or sweep in order to complete the process and fell the opponent, you know? So then I'll say, all right, so now you understand what balance is. That, what I just gave you, is what the entire art of judo is designed to teach you. That right there. So you could take the entire art of judo for 50 years, right?
Yep. Makes it seem so simple.
Yeah. Or you could just take that information and start applying it constantly. You see what I'm saying? Just explore that. So now, once I gave you that, you no longer need the entire art of judo because you got what the end result is supposed to be, right? So now, when you're sitting there working with somebody and you're pulling them and you make them step and you deny them the ability to step, they're going to trip. They're going to fall. They're going to, things like that.
That's how you get Jameson being foot swept left and right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll hear some of the guys that have either taken a few classes with you in the past or now that you're teaching the mornings, trained with you in the mornings, repeating these same things back to me, or I'll hear them telling other people during night class.
Wow, that's good.
Yep.
That's good.
That's a good compliment as
it's
a
having
teacher, right?
having a good impact on the team as a whole.
Wow, that's good. Thank you.
So I want to ask both of you guys a question. I've taken classes with Randy and gotten tossed around a little bit, and obviously about a million classes with you, Pat, at this point. But is there something about teaching that is, like, what is the most rewarding part of that, of the teaching aspect? Is it seeing the growth? Is it hearing things being repeated back? It's different than necessarily where you're a math teacher, right? And you get a test back and you see all your kids got straight A's, right? This is not the same application.
Right.
I'm curious, like, for what your guys' perspective on that is.
The greatest thing to me is, so Ryan, one of the blue belts.
I remember him.
You remember him?
I remember him vaguely, yeah.
Yeah.
Once upon a time.
I'm going to call him tomorrow, see if we can get together. But he was at work. He works at the jail, as you know. And I get a frantic call from his wife. She's like, call Ryan right now. Okay. So I call him. And I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, I just had to deal with a guy, right? And one of the most violent inmates that we've had there. And inmate went to Bay State. Let's put it that way. It was a bad day, I said, you okay? Yeah, I'm good. And he told me exactly what he did. I knew once she told me that the inmate hit the wall face first or whatever. I don't know what happened. I was like, oh, yeah, I know what he did. I knew it. So just knowing that he's safe, that my students are safe, and what I taught them works. And as he said to me, he said it was effortless. That's right there. Because everybody expects me to do stuff,
Yep.
But when my students can do it effortlessly, that right there is the big payoff.
Yeah, I have to agree 100%. We work in very different realms, but it's the same payoff. It's seeing your students executing what you've taught them without having you there to hold their hand through it.
Yes. Listen, watching what he's done with Lewis and what Lewis has done with himself, with his dedication, and taking his lessons and turning it into all those trophies upstairs, incredible.
We have so many competitors that have way cooler highlights from competition than I've ever had and ever will have. So for me, that's the payoff. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's incredible. Sit there.
I get more out of watching them compete and execute their techniques than I've ever gotten out of doing it myself.
I was sitting there thinking today as I was watching YouTube, and I assigned names to Daniel and Lewis. Lewis is the Michael Jordan of 10th Planet, Springfield, and Daniel is Scottie Pippen. They are.
Yeah.
I was going to write something about that in the student page. I was going to write something about that.
Yeah, it's been cool seeing the growth of especially those two guys, and just everyone that's kind of right on their tails. Just they're setting the example. Everyone's nipping at their heels trying to catch up to them.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you something funny. I don't think that I've said this since I've been here, but coming from another school, so I trained for a couple years before coming here, but in a gi, like at an MMA school, it's a totally different setup. And I think actually one of my first roles ever was with Ryan, and I was like, oh shit, I'm in trouble here. It was like, he's the dude's a beast.
Yep.
But I remember like the first time I rolled with Daniel too, and Lewis before he even got his purple belt. And I was like, holy shit, these guys are blue belts? Like, I am in deep shit here. Like, this is not what I am used to. Because it was just such like a foreign technique, but those guys were at such a high level. It was like very eye-opening, So
what's also really cool now is, we little by little we expand our schedule. So giving all of these guys the opportunities to start teaching their own classes and developing the way they like to piece together a curriculum and teach their style. It's just that trickle down effect. I've got my instructor style, who's got his instructor style, and then it all trickles downhill, and everyone, like I think we talked about earlier on, everyone's putting their own little spin on it. So you're getting the same overall product.
Yep.
But it's just always evolving.
Yeah. And
I love going up there, during the 6 o'clock class and just the fly on the wall, just watching what's going on.
Yeah.
Try to stay out of their business.
That's what I like to do. Any class I come to, I just sit. If you ever watch me, I just sit against the wall and just watch everybody and listen to what they say and how they teach, and and just watch their flow. Pretty impressive.
Yep. I have one more educational topic before we get to a more fun topic. You educated me on this a while back, and I think it would be good for a lot of people: the proper and improper use of the title sensei.
Well, first of all, it should never be said by the individual, ever. And too many people assign themselves honorific titles. That's highly disturbing. And sensei doesn't just refer to the martial arts. It doesn't just apply to the martial arts. It means one who has gone before. So it could be in anything, but it's a title. It's probably one of the most prestigious titles that someone could give you out of respect. So if you call someone it, like I call you sensei all the time, right? And people are like, he's not a black belt. You don't have to be a black belt. You know what I'm saying? Because you have now. We can refer to it in the respect of age. In Japan, it's usually age. Also, experience. You know what I'm saying? And you've experienced 10th Planet long before I did. So, sensei, you've guided me. You're guiding me through this. You know what I mean?
Yep. Ever since you explained that to me, now it drives me insane when I see all of the improper usage of it.
Yeah.
But it's 2021 and we're not arguing with people online.
That's right. We're new men. The thing is
that a rule?
Well, it was 2020 for him, but it's carried on to 2021.
Okay. All right.
So if I introduce you to someone, right, or someone to you, I say, well, this is Campagnola Sensei. It's up to you to say, just call me Pat. It's not up to me to say that. I could never go up out of respect for Kudo Sensei and say, this is Nori. That would be disrespectful, So I would say, this is Kudo Sensei. And he'd say, just call me Nori.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. If you break it down as something as simple and common as you teach your children to greet adults as Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, and then Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so can tell the kid to call them by whatever their name is.
And then people say, well, we're not in the dojo. Okay. Does your mom stop being your mom when you leave the house? You know what I mean? It's things like that. But yeah, the way people use all these titles and, and write them down is something that should never be written by a person. So if somebody hands you a business card that says Sensei so-and-so, just hand it back. Because they have no idea. And name comes before title. So it's not Sensei so-and-so. It would be Campagnola Sensei, not Sensei Pat Camp. It doesn't go like that.
So is it improper usage if someone was to say, who is the sensei at 10th Planet Springfield?
Yeah, because they don't have a personal relationship.
Yeah.
So you can say who's the instructor, who's the whatever, It's really a personal thing, It's out of respect, If people say that, they're saying it generically.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yep. They're just assuming that that's the leader of the school or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, we've talked about this. You've explained that to me several times, but I feel like that's one that the general public just has, everyone understands the improper use of it more than the proper use.
When it comes to the martial sciences, a lot of people don't understand the whole dynamic or the importance of a lot of things within it, you know?
They're just repeating what they've always heard incorrectly.
So if you run into people like, say, Kudo Sensei or people who are very much into the traditions, it could cause problems and be detrimental to your health with some things that happen, you know, and some things that people say.
Yeah.
You know, I've had quite a few issues because of that. But 2020,
Yep.
I changed.
It's a new man.
New man.
He's retired.
That's right.
So we can't get out of here without talking about Master Ken.
Oh, yeah. Real name Matt Page, Master Ken. Did you see his new movie called what's it
I saw the trailer for it. Now I'm going to complete blank on it too. And actually, it took me a second. I was like, wait, is that Master Ken?
Yeah.
I saw he was at the Origin camp this week.
He was?
Yeah. Jameson's up there.
No kidding.
Is he?
Yep.
Wow. That's great. Yeah. 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 So he was in town. I told him, I thought he was going to come stay with me a little bit. He was like in the States and going to be around and, you know.
So how'd you guys first met or collaborated on something years ago, right?
Yeah. A long time ago, he hit me up on Messenger and asked me if he could buy one of my shirts, the Punch Here for Life demo shirts. And I was like, you don't got to buy one. I'll send you one. He was like, all right, not a problem. So he sent me one, and then he made the video 100 Ways to Attack the Groin.
Mm-hmm.
And he had my shirt on, the bob, and he was standing, him and Todd were standing in between it, or it was standing in between them, and he showcased my shirt. So I was like, wow, that was cool. And then he said to me, you should come out and do a show. And I was like, yeah, well, you know, whatever. But I didn't really think too much about it. And then years later, I retired, and I was just sitting there one day. So I sent him a message, say, hey, I retired. I'll come out now. He was like, all right. So we set up a date, and I went.
Where is he located?
New Mexico.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yeah, I went out there and did a show. It was good. And it's all improv right there. Yeah,
No
nothing
kidding.
Awesome.
scripted. He just sits there, sets up the cameras, and says, let's go. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, he does some training at 10th Planet Albuquerque out there.
Yeah.
You see a lot of his videos feature Nate Harris. He's the instructor at 10th Planet Albuquerque.
I was just going to ask if he has any actual training. That's,
Yeah.
He has a black belt in Kimpo 5.0 under Jeff Speakman.
Mm-hmm.
He has a black belt in something, Shito-Ryu or something like that. And he trains at 10th Planet. It's a friend of his. Yeah, he's a martial artist. He said he started when he was like, I don't know, 16 or something like that.
I recently rewatched your episode again, and I was looking through some of the comments, and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
So many serious people. It's like,
Yeah.
do you not understand this is satire?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I made a comment on some I posted more pictures because everybody liked Liz. They really like Liz. So I posted some more pictures of her in the comments and said, she says hi. And she's yeah.
That's great. Yeah, because you don't see very many women on the show, period, right? Like, yeah.
And that's exactly what Matt said at the time. He said, yeah, sex sells. He said, yeah, bring her in here. So I was like,
That's awesome.
yeah, it was good.
You know, in our first podcast, where it's just me and Pat shooting the bull,
I saw that.
I think I asked you, right? Like, what do you say when people ask you about training, right? And it's always, for us, it's kind of like an uncomfortable thing where I just kind of, they're like, oh, you do that, you do the UFC, or you do that thing where you like roll around in your pajamas, you know.
Yeah.
And I always just kind of like change the subject, or, oh, so you could choke me out now, you could break my arm, or something stupid people say, right? And I was just like, yeah, ha ha ha, right, and move on. What do you say when people ask you what you do?
If they're asking me to come check it out, then I try to discourage them by telling them how rough I am. If they're just asking,
So think like random person at the gas station sees you wearing one of your Underground Alliance shirts or a 10th Planet shirt and just hits you with the casual comment.
I hand them my trading cards. That's why I designed those. a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons was they say everything that needs to be said on them. I just hand them those and go, there's different information on the back of each one. And I walk away.
This reminded me, I got 10% off at AutoZone a couple weeks ago. I think I was wearing the same exact shirt, and the guy that checked me out was like, "Oh, you do jiu-jitsu?" I'm like, "Yeah, I own 10th Planet Springfield," and he hit me with his employee discount.
Nice.
Should have gone and bought some more stuff.
That's awesome.
Nice.
All I had was like a jug of oil.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, I just do that. And then it really, if it depends on if the person is trained. If I recognize them to be trained, then it turns into a totally different conversation, you know? Because within training circles, it's kind of disrespectful. You know what I'm saying?
To ask, you mean?
If you walk up to someone who's trained, right, and everybody knows that person trained, you know, whatever, and you're trained, and you go, what is it you do?
Oh, yeah.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
And then it's not something you can really verbalize or should verbalize in that respect. And I'm going to get a lot of stuff for saying this, but within a traditional culture, it's not something to verbalize. It's something that, well, come to my dojo, I'll show you. That type thing, you know? So I've been there, and I've been where a civilian will ask, and I'll just hand them trading cards, and we're good. You know, and if they, well, I want to come check it out. No, you don't. I'm extremely rough. And I do that for a reason, you know, make sure that, you know, if they show up, they know that I'm extremely rough, and I'm trying to affect them psychologically. If they don't show up, I just saved myself some time and trouble. Yeah. You know, and some people show up and they end up, you know, I didn't think it would be this rough.
We've talked about that, right? I mean, there's a certain mindset you have to be uncomfortable with. I'm sorry, you have to be comfortable with being as uncomfortable as you possibly can imagine yourself being, right?
Whether that's here. Imagine being in his basement.
That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, whether it's, 300-pound dude on top of you, or getting punched in the face, or getting, shoved around, whatever it is, right? Like it takes a certain fortitude, for lack of a better term, to like really be okay with that.
There's a major difference between getting hit and getting touched correctly. You know, anybody can hit hard. Very few people hit correctly. And when you feel that, totally different dynamic. And people are like, because you put no effort into the strike, but it feels like this building landed on you. And that's when people go, oh my, this is insane. Like the guy at the seminar, it was a leg lock seminar.
The leg kicks.
And I did the leg kick to him. I had him kick me first, and he was wailing on me hard. He was trying to take me out. I said, good. Take me out. No. And then I touched him without any effort. And I said, how much effort did I put in that as he was laying there?
Oh, that was here. I missed that.
Yeah. It was Quentin's seminar. It was like the day before we had to close for COVID.
Yeah. You know what's funny? Every time I get in these conversations, Pat just goes, oh, God. And he gets up and walks away.
I know what's coming.
We were right by his desk, and he just looked. He's like, oh. He got up and walked away.
These guys have to experience it on their own.
Yeah. We have time for another question?
Yeah.
I could ask you a million questions, Randy. I'll just keep this podcast rolling for the next 7 days. What is your take on what I'm going to call like a more current or recent phenomenon that I've noticed? And maybe I'm just noticing it now, right? But there seems to be an awful lot of shit talk that happens. I see it. I'm thinking specifically about jiu-jitsu, right? So whether it's, I don't know, I'll call out Gordon Ryan, right? But like he talks a lot of shit. Granted, he's one of the best guys in the world, so he probably is.
It's
okay
like
with
the
that.
Conor McGregor effect.
Conor McGregor effect, right? Like, to me, just shut your mouth, right? Like, shut your mouth, period, right? But especially shut your mouth if you're a white belt, blue belt, like, you're a couple years into your thing, you've accomplished nothing. Like, just remember where you are and remember what you're doing. And so I'm just curious, like, I imagine your perspective isn't that far off from that, but, what's your...
I let your technique and everything speak for itself. You know, there's nothing to say. Anytime people come at me, I tell them it's not going to turn out the way you think it's going to turn out, and then that's my disclaimer, and then we can do whatever after that. You know, yeah, I just don't. In the sporting world, I understand it because that's what makes them money. Conor McGregor is rich because he can talk a lot of shit.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And then the same people who are just as talented, if not more talented, but don't say anything, they get fired by the UFC.
Yep.
Because they're not exciting. You know? And that's sad. I remember when Dean Lister was in the UFC and used to go out there and destroy people in the first 10 seconds of the fight, drop down with a leg lock or do something. He wasn't exciting, so they got rid of him because he was good at what he did, but it didn't do anything for the ratings.
Yeah.
You know?
I do think that you call it the Conor McGregor effect. I think that is like a perfect example of what we see now. Like you see it everywhere. We've talked about this on this podcast, right? People should keep their mouth closed about certain things, right? Like,
yeah, you should.
You think it's okay now. Like that's how you make yourself look better or feel better, maybe even, right? By just running your mouth.
He's already at the top of the food chain. He's at that level where that's just that extra little bit that he needed to make millions of dollars.
And if we're talked about within the pragmatic world, there's always the burning question about the duty to warn. You know, so you get into a self-defense, self-protection situation, and you know. You're a highly trained martial artist or you've been training your entire life or whatever goes on, is there a duty to warn? And that right there is, you know, could be looked at as the Conor McGregor effect. You know, you're sitting there going, listen, you know, you don't want to do this type thing. But then what happens if you get destroyed? Right. You know, it's so, and then you go to court. Now you're going back and forth with, you know, is there a attorney, his name's Carl Brown, wrote a book about it, about your duty to warn as a martial artist. Yep.
It's interesting. So I'll tell you, I don't mean this to be bragging or humble bragging at all, but I worked with Conor McGregor a couple of times, a couple of years back, and the person that I worked with is not that guy that I saw on TV in the last several years, right? He was very humble, very quiet.
This was the early years of his career?
It was right around the time when he was fighting Dennis Seaver. So he was really starting to, you know, he was coming up. Yeah. And he was, like, his biggest concern was just making weight for the fight, right? There was no other talk.
Was he Mystic Mac at that time? No, I think he was. He was just coming into it.
But yeah, just about, right? And like I said, that was his main concern. That's all he talked about. When people were interviewing him, like during the press events, he was talking about, like, making weight. And this was, you know, leading up to the fight. So then he starts knocking dudes out like crazy, right? And it's at that point the shit talking starts. But I'm wondering if it's like the same kind of thing, right? Where it's like, dude, I know now that this left hand is gonna put guys into the next week, right? And now I can start running my mouth because I've got that backup weapon here, you know?
I think it was more than that. I think it was Muhammad Ali. I think he watched a lot of Muhammad Ali and realized that would elevate him to that next level financially.
Right, you keep getting paid more each time, so it's just you're being positively reinforced for the behavior, and you know he's getting the outcome he needed as well. Yeah,
and look at him; he talked himself into $100 million fight.
Right,
you know, who else can say that?
Right,
you know,
people ask me that a lot. Like, well, you've met him. Like, what was he like? I'm like, not like that. I don't like that version of him. Like, I wouldn't like that in anybody. But it wasn't like the person that I met. Right.
I can tell you, I wasn't a fan at first until he did The Ultimate Fighter. And after they picked their teams, they went to the gym for their first workout, and everybody was gearing up to fight. And when he said, "Take off your gear," this is not that type of party. He said, "What good is a technique if you can't place it?" He said, "We're going to work on technique placement." I was sold. I said, "This kid knows what he's talking about." I was like, "Wow, he's good. He knows what he's talking about." Yeah, that was impressive. Yeah, right there, I was a fan.
Yeah. We were at the Celtics practice facility when they were in, it was still in Waltham at the time, And I have some funny video of him like playing basketball and stuff, and he had never played basketball, so I could probably air some stuff on there to make him embarrassed. But
So you were filming? That's what you were doing?
yeah, we were doing some film work. We actually did a promo. It was a UFC promo before one of the events at the Boston Garden, and they aired it at a Celtics game actually. So it's pretty cool. It was with him and Lucky the Leprechaun, the Celtics mascot. Yeah. Oh. So they were playing one-on-one. They played checkers. They were like doing dunks. Like it was pretty cool. They had like, because Lucky uses that like trampoline thing, so Connor was trying to do that. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, we went into their gym, like where the players work out. Right. First of all, let me tell you this side bar. Like the pull-up bar was like this thick. It was like insane. Like just because of the size of the hands of the guys. Right. Yeah. Anyway, and he was doing all kinds of crazy athletic moves in that gym, like balance moves, like just, all kinds of pull-ups, and just like, I was like, man, this guy is in some good shape and knows how to move his body, right? It was just Lucky the Leprechaun has a background. It's not capoeira, it's something else, right? But he's got some background in like a movement basis and does like some other movement types of activity. So they were like going back and forth with stuff. It was pretty impressive. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool to see, like not fighting related, but movement related. It was pretty cool.
Well, yeah, I've had conversations with Sean Bollinger and everything, and as far as UFC fighters or mixed martial artists, I'm around them a lot. Dan Severn and Shawnee Carter, Mr. International, people like that. I've been around quite a few of them, and I can tell you, people. Their technique, MMA fighters, technique, subpar at best. Their cardio, out of this world, and that's what they get off on. They succeed on their cardio. One guy that fought, I can't remember his name, fought John Jones, threw a roundhouse kick, and blew his own knee out throwing the kick because he didn't pivot on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Technique is subpar at best, and I'm a stickler for people studying the technique of each respective action as opposed to just performing techniques, and people think you need to be forceful and hard. And what totally destroyed that was when the Chinese champion, Weili, fought Thug Rose.
Yep.
Weili is constantly doing Thai kicks on the big bags and going
she was
crazy.
Like a smashing machine.
Yeah.
Yep. And she's a human tank. Thug Rose threw a flicking roundhouse, knocked her unconscious. You see, it's about the technique of the action. And there's I don't know. That's what drives me crazy about them, people like that. But Connor, some things he says, most things he says, like when he said it's about, I can't remember the exact quote. He said timing and something when he knocked.
It was after Aldo.
Yep. It was good. It was good. He really knows what he's talking about.
It was like timing beats speed, accuracy beats power, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Very good. I was a fan after watching him do certain things. And as far as his talking, I understand this is a sport. He makes money, I wouldn't make any money. I'd get fired by the UFC, I'll put up in the group an interview I did when I fought in this tournament in Japan. I got interviewed after. The guy that beat me ended up winning the tournament. And my interview was just so dead and boring. Oh, no, the better man won. And, just... they don't want to hear that.
No one wants to see that.
It's not exciting to them.
Yeah.
And it was on pay-per-view broadcast in Japan. They call it Samurai TV out there,
You hear it after UFC fights all the time. They get there in the octagon interview, and who do you want to call out next? And you got some guys that just, they already have it in their pocket ready to go, and other guys are just like, oh, whoever they want to give me is want to work my way up the rank.
And that's not what they want to hear.
No.
Yeah.
They want you to call out the guy that's sitting over there watching.
Yep. Dana wants it exciting.
Yeah. Makes their job way easier if you're going to do that.
So I don't know.
Cool.
Before we wrap it up, you want to tell everyone how they can find you, where they can find you, all that good stuff?
Just go to Underground Alliance at YouTube. You know, send me a message through one of the videos. Check out all the content there.
Well, we wanted to do this for a long time, right? We'll put one of those things up here on the on the video.
We'll link him.
Yeah, we've wanted to do that.
Yeah, Randy has a growing YouTube channel. You're doing your own. Is it weekly or bi-weekly? Martial insight and advice.
I was trying to do it weekly, and it was driving me crazy. That's a lot of work.
It is.
I retired to work that much. I need to go back to jail. But no, I just do it when I can now. You know, I just try to get some good content.
I was on an earlier episode, and I just watched was it 2 of them you put up recently? Yeah.
Yeah, one of them was extremely long that I did. I should have cut that one up. It's like an hour and 35 or something. Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, I got another one coming up in Rhode Island. I got to go interview this guy. And I'm going to California on the 13th to the 20th, and I'm going to try to interview some people out there.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, check it out.
Awesome. We'll definitely be doing a part 2.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Randy.
Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for rolling.
Thanks for rolling.